I'm the Amateur Logician from amateurlogician.com. Let's take a look at the laws of the syllogism. Consider this example: all A's are B's, all C's are A's, thus all C's are B's. That conclusion logically follows from those two premises. There's a pattern or structure there that makes that argument valid. We can visualize this with a diagram. All A's are contained within B, and all C's are contained within A, so clearly all C's are contained within B. The conclusion validly follows from those two premises. Now, in the categorical syllogism, we start from two categorical propositions which serve as premises to derive a third categorical proposition, which is the conclusion. Insofar as we start with true premises, and provided we follow the formal rules of logic, the laws of the syllogism, then the derived conclusion is guaranteed 100% to be true. But it's important to realize that the conclusion only follows from the premises by the structure of that syllogistic argument. There's a certain pattern there. So a valid argument, that is an argument that follows the formal rules of logic, can bring a false conclusion if you have a false premise. But if you have true premises plus that valid argument, then the conclusion is guaranteed to be true. And in this, we are reasoning, which can be thought about as the act of the mind that objectively affirms or denies the relation between two ideas based on a third idea. That third idea is the all-important middle term. In all A's are B's, all C's are A's, therefore all C's are B's. The A term is the middle term. It appears in both premises, but not the conclusion. A is the middle term. It allows us to connect the C's and the B's in the conclusion to reach this new piece of information, that new proposition, that derived proposition. The middle term does the work. It allows us to legitimately say that all C's are B's. A interconnects the C's and the B's. Now, what are these laws? It starts with the dictum de omni et nullo. Whatever is affirmed or denied of the logical whole may be likewise of its logical parts. The maximum of all and none. Now, the first rule is that a categorical syllogism contains three terms, A, B, and C, in our example. At least one premise must be universal. You can't have both premises as particular. You're not going to get a valid conclusion out of that. You're not going to get something new out of that that's valid. The third law or rule is that if there is a particular premise, then the conclusion must be particular. Law or rule number 4, at least one premise must be affirmative. Number 5, if there's a negative premise, then the conclusion must be negative and vice versa. That is, if the conclusion is negative, then one premise must be negative. Number 6, the middle term must be distributed at least once, and we'll get into distribution in a moment. And finally, number 7, if a term is distributed in the conclusion, then it must be distributed in the premise. Rules number 3 and 2, those laws deal with the quantity. Rules or laws number 4 and 5 deal with the quality of the syllogism. So again, rules number 2 and 3 deal with the quantity of the syllogism. 4 and 5 deal with the quality, and rules 6 and 7 deal with the distribution. So what is distribution? Distribution is in reference to the extension of the terms in a proposition. A distributed term refers to all members that belong to it. So if we have a universal affirmative proposition like all A's are B's, the subject term A is distributed because we're referring to every member of A. In a particular affirmative proposition, such as some A's are B's, nothing is being distributed. In a universal negative proposition, such as no A's are B's, both the subject A and the predicate B are distributed. In a particular negative proposition, such as some A's are not B's, the predicate term, B, is distributed. We're to go through an example. But I also like to think about these laws or rules in shorthand, and I think writing them out in shorthand is a quick and easy way to memorize these laws or rules. So let's do that. So this is how I do it, at least. So we have, first, quantity. So we need at least one universal premise. We know that if we have a particular premise, then we will get a particular conclusion. We then have quality. We know that we need at least one affirmative proposition, and also that if we have a negative premise, we have a negative conclusion, and if we have a negative conclusion, then we have a negative premise, one negative premise. And then there's distribution. And with distribution, we need the middle term distributed at least once, and we also know that if a term is distributed in the conclusion, it must be distributed in the premise. So these are the laws of the syllogism. For example, let's say we have all birds fly, all geese fly. Conclusion, therefore, those three dots mean therefore all geese are birds. Is that argument good or bad? Is it valid or invalid? Well, we can go through our checklist. So, in terms of quantity, is there at least one universal proposition? Yes. We have all birds fly is universal. All geese fly is universal. If we have a particular premise, we'll have a particular conclusion. Well, that's vacuously satisfied. So that's good. Next, let's consider quality. Do we have at least one affirmative proposition? Yes. In fact, both are affirmative. What about that biconditional relation, so to speak? If you have a negative premise, you need a negative conclusion, and vice versa. Well, that's vacuously satisfied. What about the middle term? Well, the middle term is fly. It appears in both premises, but not the conclusion. Is that distributed? The answer is no. That's not distributed. And finally, if we have a distributed term in the conclusion, it must be distributed in the premise. Well, in this case, geese is distributed in the conclusion, but it's likewise distributed in the premise, so that's good. However, we're violating one law or rule, so this is invalid. It's a true conclusion, but it's an invalid argument. We have the structure all A's are C's, all B's are C's. Conclusion, all B's are A's. Well, not necessarily. Think about it this way. Here's that middle term C. It might be, well, okay, A is in there, and okay, B is in there, but they're separate. So this is indeed invalid. It's a bad argument. Now, I am the Amateur Logician from amateurlogician.com. If you enjoy this type of content, please consider signing up to my newsletter. You can visit my website at amateurlogician.com. I have an extensive tutorial on traditional verbal style logic. You can also support my work by buying me a cup of coffee. I would greatly appreciate that. If you want to see more of this stuff, consider subscribing to this YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you and your viewership, and I enjoy this type of content and studying this type of material. I hope you do too. I'll see you soon. Good luck to you and be well.